Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 20. That's right, episode 20 of the Hot Path Show. I'm Johnny, and joined here by Tobias. Welcome in, Tobias. How's it going today?
Good evening. Thank you. It's going very good. I'm a little bit tired, but it's all good. How are you
I know.
doing?
I'm doing great. I was just telling you I was having some internet issues, like basically all week long, and my internet was out. It was almost like thinking that I was gonna have to do another pre-record episode, just like pre-record on my own, and then like upload it at a coffee shop or something like that.
That would be
But yeah,
nice.
we are back live for the Hot Path Show this week. So yeah, excited to be here with y'all today. The kind of topic that I've thrown together this week, again, dealing with a lot of internet issues and stuff throughout the week, but I do want to kind of show off some debugging things within Unity dots and ECS. Sounds like Tobias has some debugging things that he's going to be showcasing as well. So yeah, I definitely think that it's going to be a good and useful stream because of that. But you know, yeah, and then yeah, we just do have a bunch of other really cool and interesting main topics of discussion. So yeah, I guess we just kind of like get into it. We can start at the top here. Something that I just announced like literally 1 hour ago is that we are officially going to be hosting a Dots Game Jam. So yeah, very exciting. Announcing the first ever Dots Game Jam for the Turbo Makes Games YouTube channel here. So yeah, basically it's going to be kicking off on Friday, July 5th. So 4 weeks from today, on the Hot Path Show, we're going to announce the theme of the jam, and then you'll basically have 10 days after that. So you'll have the weekend after that show, the full next week, and then the following weekend after that. And then it basically ends Sunday at midnight, end of the day, Sunday, midnight Pacific time. So yeah, it'll be a good 10-day jam. Very much looking forward to it. And yeah, I kind of put a whole thing of the kind of the judging categories and rules and everything like that. With this jam, I wanted to really gear it towards like education and kind of like learning and experimenting with dots and all that. So it is a solo only jam. So no teams. It's just going to be you exploring, developing on your own. Again, it's mostly a code-focused jam, so I don't have any issue if you using any art that you sourced from any asset packs or anything like that. As long as you have the legal right to use those assets, that is all good with me. And then as far as like the judging criteria goes, it's going to be judged off of the usage of dots. Did you use dots in interesting and cool ways to solve different problems? What is the gameplay? Did you actually make a fun and interesting game? The aesthetics, does it kind of have a coherent art style to the game? I understand that a lot of people may be using programmer art, but you can still definitely make programmer art look good with a little bit of effort. And then finally, theme, how well did you implement the theme of the game? Did you, do a good job fitting the core gameplay mechanics to the theme? Or did you have a clever and kind of unique take on the theme? So, yeah, Tobias, I know I kind of just posted this a little bit ago, but have you had a chance to go through and kind of give a quick little look at the jam at all? What do you think of it?
Actually, I have not. I was dealing with the graphics updates and and stuff after what I just showed you. I was doing earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah. So no, but I'm pumped. I think I will have plenty of time to participate in this one, even though I have a side gig going on right now.
Yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to structure it around, like kind of knowing that people probably have other commitments during the week, but still give them like a good amount of time to participate in it, work on it, because again, it does span over the course of 2 weekends, and maybe even during the week you might have a little bit of spare time here and there. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Maybe I missed it, but is there an additional theme except for dots being a dots game?
So yeah, I'm going to be announcing a theme, basically on the Hot Path Show on that Friday, July 5th.
Oh, that's yeah.
Yeah. And then But yeah, and then the judging is going to be basically participants. So anyone who submitted a game, you'll be available to go through and judge the other submissions. And again, I think it's like a star rating or something like that, how itch.io does it, where you just kind of rate on each of the categories, and then at the end, those get kind of averaged out, and then it gets ranked in kind of like an overall score, essentially. So. Pretty standard game jam. I'm very much looking forward to it. Again, let's see if do we have any people? We have 4 people already who have signed up for the jam, so very exciting. I have a link down in the description of this. And by the way, yes, you can use assets for animations and everything like that. The only thing that I am disallowing is code assets. So, I mean, I definitely, like I mentioned here, I love the agents navigation asset, but I would much rather you create your own, implementation of some kind of pathfinding algorithms or a flow field, something like that, that, people can see, because the code for this should all be open sourced so people can kind of learn from them. Again, I want this to be like kind of a learning resource and everything. But I am saying that if there are any open source third-party libraries like the Latios framework or even the Turtles Bovine Labs core, I think those could be ones that you should be able to use, because again, they're open source, available to everybody, and it could be like a good opportunity for you to experiment around with them if you haven't played around with them at all. So that is the Dots game jam.
Previous Dots code that you have laying around that I have so much Dots code that I would sometimes it doesn't feel like you're game jamming when you're like, oh, I already have half of this lying around.
Right.
I'm not gonna pretend I don't know how to write it,
Well, that's where I think things get into like a little bit of a gray area. I answered somebody's question over on Discord kind of about this, where I was saying that it's going to be kind of like hard for me to enforce if you took a system from like an older project that you had or something like that. But really, like, most of the code, like the core code, should be created by you during the jam. It should be kind of like new and unique to the project that you're creating.
Yeah. It's a tricky thing. Every game jam I've been at, it's like you feel somebody is like, maybe they're stretching the rules a little bit, but often it's like, as long as you got the spirit of it, it's okay.
Right. And I'll allow like the GPU ECS animation bakers or the Rukonka, like if you're, because that's kind of like a tool to allow you to do animations in ECS. Like I'm not expecting you to create like a whole animation framework kind of around this, but again, it's more kind of along the lines of like I mentioned, the agents navigation asset, where it's like, if there is kind of some flow field pathfinding or something like that, I would prefer that you write that and implement that, because that's kind of more directly tied towards gameplay rather than asset management and kind of just enabling basic functions in your game, basically. That's a good one. Recreate Unity inside Unity from scratch in a weekend. No, you have 2 weekends, remember.
Oh, come on. Give me a challenge.
Definitely. So check out the Turbo Makes Games Dots Game Jam. Again, we'll be reminding you over the coming weeks here. So next thing that I want to showcase is Unite Barcelona. You can officially buy tickets for Unite Barcelona, which is taking place September 18th through 20th. You can register, and exciting news, I am officially going to be there. You see the Turbo Makes Games logo on the official page here, alongside some of the other insiders. So Code Monkey, Speed Tutor, Useless Game Dev, and Jasper Dev. They're going to be there. There's also a couple other kind of tutorial creators and people like that who aren't listed on this page, who I know are going to be attending on their own. So and then was that
maybe me,
and maybe Tobias. We're trying to get Tobias out there.
Scheduling and making sure we'll see.
Yeah,
I want to be there.
Yeah, and yeah, I'm trying to see if we can like do a live version of the Hot Path show at Unite, but yeah, we'll see with Unity's scheduling if they allow us to do something like that, which I think would be super cool. But I think they're planning on doing some type of like meetups with some of the insiders and people like that. Again, I'll be around on the show. Excited to see you all, hang out with you all who will be there in attendance. So. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I guess I didn't put the link for the game jam in the description yet, but I can go ahead and just post it in the chat for you there. Should have that. It looks like Wayne Games will be there. Awesome. Excited to meet you there. So, yeah, go check out Unite. You can now purchase your tickets there. It is a little bit pricey for the tickets, and I know you'll probably have to pay for travel expenses and such if you aren't native to Barcelona. But I think it'll be worth it. I definitely think there's going to be a lot of cool things announced at Unite. I'm assuming there's going to be quite a bit of Dots things. I've definitely heard some rumblings about some things and some hints at things that may be there. So we'll see. That'll be very exciting. But yeah, regardless, I mean, we're going to be talking about this stuff on the Hot Path show and all kinds of stuff later on. So lots of cool stuff there. And then also did want to remind you that the template toolkit sale is still happening, which goes until the 12th of next week. I think it's like Wednesday of next week. So yeah, it's like up to 60% off on a bunch of cool assets, and you can get an extra 10% off orders over $60 with June 10 off on there. By the way, I was looking at this, and it's kind of cool because it shows like some of the popular assets on sale. The number one most popular asset on sale is this Dots Traffic City one that we took a look at last week. So yeah, it seems that people might be liking this one. We're gonna say something.
That thumbnail on the first video, that got to be AI, right?
Oh yeah, for sure.
I through the stream, I wasn't sure, but yeah, it looked too pretty.
It kind of has the hallmarks of the
smoothness.
Unlike my thumbnails, which I created 100% myself.
I'm not sure if you're being running. I don't actually know.
Did you see the thumbnail from today?
Wait, oh, you mean like
the giant bug?
Stream. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's obviously you drew that in a flash. I expect nothing less.
Yeah. But anyways, this Dots Traffic City asset is available on sale. I still haven't got a chance to play around with it, unfortunately. Was really hoping to have some time this week to put it through its paces and do a proper review on it. But yeah, again, if you do want to check it out, again, it is available for 50% off right now.
I wanna buy it just to look through the code. And I have no use for it.
Yeah, no, that's like always a good thing about those assets is kind of like using them as a learning resource.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, and then the last kind of thing that I wanted to bring up before getting into some of our other topics of discussion is this right here. So I don't know if you saw this, but actually the other day, Unity did a live stream with the developers of Diplomacy is Not an Option. So
I heard about this, but I missed it. I need to see this. Well, I saw that game early in the forums, and now I want to.
Yeah, well, I missed it live too because I didn't have internet that day, so but I've been kind of going through the stream here, and so some people may not recognize the face, but this developer who's talking right here, Sergey, he goes by Eisenhorn. Is it Eisenhorn 91 online?
Oh, the one with the big dude with the big sword on his
yeah.
A legend in he and Latos or what they
Latios, Latios, Turtle, they're Even
the
Wayne
Dots
Games,
Legends.
who's in the chat, by the way.
Oh, oh yeah, sure. Also forum legend.
Yeah. So yeah, one of the forum legends. Yeah, they created this game. Diplomacy is not an option. It's kind of like a real-time strategy battling type game. And yeah, they kind of showed a bunch of things that they did to basically have like hundreds of thousands of dynamic units. All kind of doing their own different things and with their own custom animation system and stuff. So yeah, I think they're talking about the animation specific portion of it right here. I didn't. I'm still kind of watching through this portion, so I didn't really hear too much about their animation solution. But a little bit earlier, they kind of talked about their whole pathfinding solution. So it's kind of like a flow field pathfinding solution. But it's really cool. Like they've done a lot of optimizations on it where basically the whole flow field is like essentially cached because, as like things are only like really changing when you're like building new structures and things like that. And that's the only place you need to like really recalculate the flow fields there. But they do some other interesting optimizations to make the movements of the individual units to look a little bit more natural. Because if they just said, everything in this square right here, move to this square right here, then the movement's going to look kind of like mechanical, where like basically all the units go to like the center of the next one and the center of the next one and center of the next one, and so the units kind of, I think he was saying they have like a little bit like a line of sight to maybe like different segments of the little like the perimeters of each square. And then kind of like depending on that, that's kind of like their target that they'll walk towards. And then it ends up just giving a little bit more like natural movement. Like it makes it look how kind of units would naturally like navigate around things rather than that more kind of mechanical movement. So yeah, there's definitely like some cool things in there. I think it's really inspiring to see a full production level game created with dots, and again really taking advantage of the performance aspects of it, being able to have hundreds of thousands of dynamic units and things all work really well. So yeah, I see it highlighted here. They do line of sight checks through the portals of each grid. Right. Like that makes sense. Kind of the different edges. Yeah, and yeah, if you do want to learn a little bit more about this, I would highly recommend checking out the stream. And then I'm pretty sure this developer has kind of done pretty significant write-ups on things in the Unity forums. Just kind of like in various places throughout the forum. So a lot of good kind of learning resources in there. Okay. You got anything to say on the stream? I know you didn't get a chance to see it yet, but
yeah, I guess just like when you had the Patreon special of Roller Coaster Tycoon, and we talked about how that is like a game that is enticing to make with dots. This is a 100%. Similar feeling, like an RTS. That would be something fun to make because you sort of get to flex a lot of different muscles.
100%. Well, hey, maybe you can make one during the game jam.
I want to make my chicken stew thing.
Oh yeah.
But that depends on how much time I can put into it and what the goals I have.
Yeah, no, the game jam is a good excuse to prototype some idea that you've had for a while, or if there's some certain algorithms or something that you wanted to experiment with. I think it would be. Yeah. And yeah, one other thing that I kind of wanted to mention that I was just kind of thinking to myself as I was watching the stream is like, they're kind of like talking about all these kind of like in-depth optimizations that they've made for, specifically the flow field pathfinding and all that. I was just kind of thinking like, all those optimizations are great, but, depending on your game, they might not necessarily always be necessary. And it seems like the way that they were kind of explaining all the optimizations they were things that could easily be sort of like added in after the fact. Like once you kind of have that like base level of flow field pathfinding, then okay, let's take it to the next level where we're kind of like caching things and then recalculating just when certain buildings are created. And then okay, maybe if we have like a really big world and we find that it's taking a long time to recalculate things, let's implement some solution where we're only recalculating, specific regions of the flow field and not the entire thing over and over. So just kind of like taking things one step at a time and really implementing optimizations as they come. And then, again, as you run into certain behaviors, like, okay, now I see the units are like moving a little bit mechanically, how can we make them move a little bit more naturally? Now let's kind of like add that next layer on top of that. Does that kind of make sense? Does that resonate with you?
Yeah. I was just gonna say like that. I think there's a two-part like thing to view this, and this is a little bit like idealistic in some sense, but I think you should view optimization in a way like you should implement your feature in a straightforward way with the big O in mind, so you don't have quadratic and squared or whatever unnecessary. Like the good stuff that
and just the basic smart, not doing
don't
something
do
in
random
a very
access
dumb,
and unnecessary. Try to use all that, but then you should implement it in like structure wise or like algorithmically wise, maybe slightly naive way to just get it going, and then maybe like, ooh, this is going a little bit slow. Maybe we need some acceleration structures like a quad tree or whatever. And that's the thing you should probably like shove in afterwards when you realize it needs it. But I think a lot of people, they just make the game and then they like, oh, it's going too slow. And then they just dig into the profiler until it goes better. But I think a better way is to like have the experience to know like, oh, this is not a dumb way to do this, but there's like several other steps to do it really fast. Let's not complicate it. Let's just not do it in a stupid way. Do it in a straightforward way. Think a little bit about it. Maybe have a conversation with colleagues or ChatGPT, and then afterwards, like, oh, it needs some complicated stuff to make it fast enough,
right?
As they have made it. So I think that's a very good approach that they have made.
Yeah, definitely. And
they quick anecdote. Batterite had a very, very advanced runtime reloading system where you could basically, in the end of the game development, you could basically take away all the gameplay features out of the game and start the engine once and then make all the content without restarting the game session once. All of the content code and contents was completely reloadable, and that made the game super, super easy to iterate on, which was needed because it was a PvP where feeling and balance was everything, and that was good for Batterite. And we knew this is not a CPU performant way. So when we did a sequel to Batterite Royale, we're like, okay, now we're gonna speed up our CPU stuff. This won't fly anymore because it's too big of a game. That's the kind of stepping stone. Like we can sacrifice some CPU performance for iteration speed, and then next one, well, now we have time to make it better and make
very
it fast.
Dependent on the game that you're making at the time. Yeah.
Yes. So yeah. Anyway, continue.
Yeah. No. They kind of mentioned some of the acceleration structures that they're using to really speed things up, and they actually mentioned that. I think their pathfinding is like so optimized that the pathfinding is not even like a bottleneck for them at all. It sounds like most of their bottlenecks are actually kind of coming from like the target finding, like kind of doing like ray casting to figure out where they should target things and kind of things of that nature. So definitely a very interesting stream. A lot of good like technical points on there, and I'm looking forward to finishing out this stream probably later today.
I'm gonna watch it tomorrow morning when I wake up.
Sweet. And by the way, I'm looking at our screen right now, and this is like a stream within a stream happening right now.
Yeah.
It's like we got our heads over to this side, and then then we have them.
They should have
they're sharing their screen, and
they should have watched a little bit of the Hot Path show, and then we'd be complete.
Yeah, right. You have that full like.
All the way.
So yeah, super cool that Unity has been doing more of these streams, and hey, you might see me on one of these streams in the near future here.
Spicy. Somebody's getting good. Whatever. Good. It sounds nice. I'm looking forward if it happens.
Yeah. Should be cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so we did that, and then yeah, I guess one thing that I do want to mention kind of before moving on is that you can support us over on Patreon. Tobias, you mentioned that I had a bonus episode where I talked about making Roller Coaster Tycoon with dots. But then, I put up a bunch of kind of newer ones for the previous month of May, where I talked a little bit about, why I think you should specialize something in game development, but still have like a really good general fundamental understanding of game development, because I think that's kind of really what helps, you be able to continue your career for a long time, just to kind of have like a good general knowledge of things. Also, I did a kind of behind the scenes video of like how I made that video, kind of going through the process of just kind of creating some simple videos like that. And then I did another video where I talked about some of my upcoming plans for the live streams, the YouTube channel, and everything like that. And in there, I straight up like talked about one game idea that I've had for a while. So if you do want to hear about that, then check it out. So now we can get into, we'll just kind of take a break from, I guess we're kind of doing things in a little bit of a weird order here, but we can go into kind of our warm-up question here, which is actually, something interesting because that I wanted to talk about is just kind of like space travel in general, because this week has kind of been like a pretty significant week for space travel. We see first Boeing, they did like their first crewed test of it's called the Boeing Starliner. Yeah. And so those guys I think they are on they made it to the International Space Station now. It's a new company has kind of entered the space race here, and then of course the really cool one was the SpaceX Starship, right? Yeah, all these Starship, Starlink, all this, and that was insane to watch because just a massive rocket. I don't even like know how to describe it, but I guess
few people in the chat who have not watched it, but I suspect most people have are geeky enough to probably have that interest as well. But continue.
No, I was just gonna pass it over to you and just kind of, because I saw you had kind of been retweeting some things on it and just kind of wanted to I don't know, just kind of gauge your thoughts and just kind of interest on it. Like I know obviously you're kind of like into space, and your game is named after a kind of key portion of SpaceX lore, I guess, if you will. So
just read instructions. It's not like I set out to name it after anything from SpaceX, but one of the drone ship on the west coast that catches Falcon 9 rocket that is launched from Vandenberg airspace, whatever. That drone ship on the water is named Just Read Instructions.
Yes.
So when you Google Just Read Instructions on YouTube, when you search for it, you will find. And here we have the Starship. I've been following this like super closely. I've been following SpaceX, I think, since 2014, so 10 years now. When they first had the Starhopper, the Grasshopper, which was the first ever thing that they tried to even land before Falcon 9 or anything. It's just insane what progress they've made.
Yeah, because you saw at the beginning when they were like trying to land these and they were kept falling over and exploding all the time, and now they land perfectly 100% of the time.
Yeah. I remember that, like the first time one of these fell over after they have landed a few, and one fell over, and you were like, "Oh my God, it fell over!" And then I was like, "Well, wait, they've like landed 26 of them already, and this one fell over. Who cares? They're
Right.
gonna just
Yeah.
perfect it." And now it's just completely
And
standard.
still, I mean,
Like,
let's be honest, like even it just falling over is incredibly impressive. Like, thinking
yeah.
of like how high that up is up in the sky, it should just land at 1,000,000 miles an hour and just disintegrate into pieces, right?
Yes. It's the every other rocket in history have done exactly that, except for Falcon 9, and now this one. Yeah, I think one of the most fascinating thing is like how well SpaceX can let the public follow this, because of how well they are documenting it through live streams.
Yeah.
Like the when they had the first like halfway successful flip maneuver with the I don't know, SN9 or something. I don't remember. It was one of the starships that they tried to belly flop down,
Oh,
and
yeah,
and
yeah.
um, and you had a camera watching it from below when it came down, and you see straight into the Raptor burning combustion chamber. And I remember seeing a tweet that said like, "Oh, the simulation have a hard time rendering this." Like, yes, this is crazy. And then you have the expression where a rocket engine can go fuel rich or oxygen rich. So depending on what it had different problems, you need to have the right mixture to make it work properly. And then like in the very end of one of the belly flop tries, the engine was obviously breaking down. So it like you saw green sparks flying out, green flames, and that means like the copper inside of it is probably burning up or something. And then somebody called like, "Oh well, now it's going engine rich." It's like burning itself through smithereens from inside. There's so many fascinating, like mind-blowing engineering details about this stuff that I can never get enough of it. I
Seriously,
think
yeah. It's
it's just
engineering. It's peak engineering, peak human engineering. We'll say that.
yes,
But I mean, I just
exactly.
love this like takeoff at the beginning. Like, I mean, this has got to be the biggest rocket ever launched, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think
I
I
mean, look
doubled
at
the
that.
thrust of the Saturn V.
That is insane. Like, this is a huge, massive area, and it's just completely filled with
I think
smoke.
it's
And even if you
126.
listen to this thing, it's just like ripping.
Yes. I think it's
So
126
cool.
or 120 meters tall and 5,000 metric tons on liftoff.
Insane.
Yeah,
Insane. Yeah, I mean,
completely
that thing is
stupid.
huge, and you just see all these like massive jet engines, and just one of those has like so much thrust, and there's like what, 27 or something like that.
Yeah, one Merlin engine, the smaller ones that are on the Falcon 9. Guess how many horsepower one Merlin engine can put out?
Gosh, I don't even know. Like 10,000.
15,000. So it's a good guess.
That's so much, though.
I think Elon Musk said once like the Merlin engine is on the verge of just molecules ripping themselves apart. It's like there isn't like a weak point. The whole thing is just optimized until like if you push 4% more, it just like explode into
Just all the atoms
molecules.
split.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, takeoff was insane. It sounds like the actual space travel portion of it was pretty successful. And then you see, I think, is it this part here? By the way, this video that I'm watching, this is from a guy called Scott Manley. He did like a really good breakdown of it.
That's
I think,
exactly the link I had
oh
on
my
my
gosh.
yes, so we are sync here.
100%. But yeah,
Yeah.
so he did a super good breakdown about kind of the whole space flight, and then I think as we get a little deeper into the space flight, you see that I think they thought kind of part of the hinge was letting essentially a little bit of air through, which is enough to like basically make, yeah, you see kind of some of this heat coming through here. And yeah, somehow through the entire space flight, it seemed like the wing was able to stay on enough where it could, maneuver course and hit. It sounds like kind of where they were expecting it to, right?
Yeah, the little flap that could.
The little flap that could.
Yes, but you can see in the end how they have the telemetric or whatever it's called, from all the angle of the ship and everything. That's
Right.
all
Yeah. Yeah.
real time updated, and it does the belly flop. And like I
Yeah.
don't think they have any cameras around where they dropped it, because they intentionally coasted it through the atmosphere enough for it to fall in the darkness in the Pacific. They had good contrast, I believe, for everything. And so nobody knows how it looked when it fell down. We just know
Right.
that
Right.
some angle measurement showed that it was belly flopping, but
Yeah.
hopefully, yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, it was just pretty cool because like in this breakdown by Scott Manley, he was saying that yeah, even though the hardware failed, the software was able to take over and still figure out how to maneuver this in the correct ways that they were expecting it to, which is really incredible, and I think that goes to show the importance of writing good, robust software.
Yeah, I remember reading some a math article by a mathematician who worked on the final mathematical problem of being able to land one of these thing, and he's like, I think that the phrase they used was like, oh, so this problem is like taking this equation which has infinite possibilities of like solutions, where a lot of them are just completely bad, and
Or yeah,
taking that and
explosion and
doing this an insane calculation to like convert it into a finite form where you can actually get an answer. And it's like, and I just read it and I was like, I have no idea what I just read, but it sounds like so complicated. So this is peak engineering, as you said.
yeah, 100%. And actually, kind of related, I came across like another video on YouTube, I think, about just kind of like the rules that like NASA engineers had to like basically create all the software for all of the kind of NASA rovers and spaceships and everything like that. Just so it's kind of like robust enough that it doesn't fail and all this. So it's really interesting, the like kind of very strict rules that they have to write certain software, like just kind of like a simple example, which is pretty good practice anyways, is if you have like any type of loop, you should always kind of have some like upper bounds condition where if it like gets caught in the loop for some reason, it can kind of exit out on that on its own, by some like additional counter that you have, rather than like relying on something inside the loop to change. Because if that doesn't happen, then you could be stuck in that loop, and then now your NASA rover is doing circles on the moon and you can't do anything about it, right?
Yeah. There's also like an old video from, I think, Primal Space is the YouTube channel, where they talk about the computation hardware that is normally used in aerospace versus in SpaceX, which revolutionized all the cost structure of everything. And they're like, well, normally you buy a computer that is like made from this company and it's like radiation hardened, and then you can send it to space. But space is like, nah, we don't care. And they just like, I think they said like this is like for 2016 or something. They buy i7, like the Intel i7 or whatever architecture, and they put at least 3 of them calculating the exact same thing, and then they have an agreement algorithm. So if one of them gets shot by a deep space ray and one bit gets flipped, they have an agreement algorithm where the other 2 will be like, no, this is the right thing, and so they don't do much radiation hardening. They just put bunch more processing that does the exact same thing. So that's how they deal with it, which is also super fascinating.
Yeah, no, it's super interesting how you can like solve problems in like kind of non-typical ways, I guess, where I think a couple weeks ago for the dynamic allocation, I shared a talk by Ryan Fleury, kind of talking about something I don't remember. I can't think of like the main name of the topic, but it was on the arena allocators thing. And so yeah, one of the things was, I guess there was this kind of like anecdote about some developer who was creating some software for like GPS guided missiles or something like that. And I guess it turns out in the software there was kind of like a memory leak in there that essentially would fill up the amount of RAM that's available on that onboard controller in like 30 minutes. Well, they're like, that's okay because it's on a missile and the missile's only going to live for 10 minutes until it explodes. So
that's one of
so
the
they're
cases
like, we don't need to fix the memory leak.
There will literally not be a memory left.
Exactly, because that computer will not exist in 10 minutes.
Yes.
So anyways, space travel is awesome. Yeah.
Yes.
Anything else to say on that?
What's his name? Tim Dodd, Everyday Astronauts. He has good coverage of all of this. He's probably going to release an interview with
You said Tim Dodd, was it?
Tim Dodd, the Everyday Astronaut. Have you not
Astronaut.
heard of this?
I feel like I have. I'm not like super familiar. I feel like I've seen the name.
Yeah, he has so much good content on space and SpaceX. He has interviewed Elon Musk 2 or 3 times, I think. And one of the times he's literally just pointing out a thing that he like, oh, are you gonna do this? And Elon is like standing there like, no, but now that you mention it, yeah. And he literally just like rethinks one of the control systems on the Starship. Like, yeah, we should do that. And then the next time, like a half a year later, they have another interview and like, yeah, we changed that. You pointed out a good thing. Like, I think that's just crazy, humble, nice stuff that you can like, yeah, I just took some good idea from a YouTuber who just pointed something else, even though like they obviously know what they are doing. So yeah. I think that's I think it's very good.
I was going to say, I think it's really cool that, companies like SpaceX and Tesla exist where, they are willing to take crazy gambles and risks, even if it doesn't, work in the short term. It kind of leads to something better and interesting in the long term, I feel like.
Yeah, and they are the most. You had the law of like how much time you allocate for the project. That's how much time it's going to take.
Oh yeah. Parkinson's law.
Parkinson's law. They are the master of just destroying that law. And they're like, well, we're gonna make this happen in 3 years. And
It'll be ready when it's ready.
And everybody else is like, well, maybe 15 years is a good reason. 3 years. Let's try. Yeah. All right.
Okay. So yeah, next up, we'll go into our context switch, and then because our quick tip kind of fits in with our main topic. So a lot of like really interesting points of discussion here today. A lot of cool things that Unity is doing and all that. But wanted to share this because it's actually something that came out last week that we missed because we pre-recorded. But this Dots ebook that Danny has kind of been hinting at for a little while just got released. I don't know if you saw this. Did you by chance see the announcement or anything on this at all?
This is completely new to me, so I'm going to check this one out tomorrow. Yeah. So it's something that Unity have made for Dots specifically?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we'll kind of be going through it here. Let me just post the link in the chat for everybody. If you want to follow along. But yeah, so it's basically this like almost 50-page ebook here. It's called Introduction to the Data-Oriented Technology Stack for Advanced Unity. Oh, I'm not even sharing the screen. Introduction to the, here actually I'll share this one instead. This one's a little better sizing wise. So it's called Introduction to the Data-Oriented Technology Stack for Advanced Unity Developers. So I know this has been in the works for a while. This was primarily written by Brian Will, who he has a he had a YouTube channel. I guess he still has a YouTube channel, but I think one of his like most famous videos was something along the lines of like object-oriented programming is embarrassing or something like that.
I like it.
Yeah. Got a lot of people
I like
upset,
that.
I think a little bit.
That's a phrase, not object oriented.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so yeah, anyways, and then after, like, I think kind of maybe shortly after that or something, he actually got hired by Unity, and he kind of does a lot of their sort of like tutorial creations. Like he's done, like if you see any of the kind of tutorial sample projects they have, like the, was like the little tanks one, where there's kind of like the little tanks that run around and shoot the little balls. So he's kind of like created that tutorial and some content around that. So yeah, now he's created this ebook. There's also some other contributors here, such as Danny, of course, co-host of the show.
Nice.
And then Laurent, who's kind of the product manager, I guess, for Unity Dots and some of the multiplayer stuff. So yeah, it's a pretty interesting book. I haven't gotten really a chance to like read through much of it, but kind of my general takeaway from it is kind of the beginning sort of introduction portions of it I think are pretty good and interesting. Like this first kind of talks about like kind of performance in general, kind of gives like a little bit of a history on computing performance and all this. And then, talks about some kind of like modern performance issues, garbage collection, and other things in here. So I think this is all like pretty good, interesting stuff here, just kind of about performance and getting people like thinking a little bit more performance minded, and just kind of like understanding that. And then of course it gives introduction to, Unity's solution for some of the aforementioned problems, like the dots and entity component system. So, and then of course it goes into like, the C# job system. And so this is the kind of portion of the ebook where I think people familiar with dots and ECS are a little bit like this might be kind of like redundant for a lot of people kind of in our audience here. Just kind of like, going over, what the job system is, what the burst compiler is. But if you are still like new to this stuff, this is all like, really good and valuable information. There's a lot of like good links to videos and kind of like, like it's like SAMD, and then you can like click on this and it brings you to the Wikipedia page to learn a little bit more about it. And it kind of goes into all the packages. So collections package, math package, entities, which is ECS, kind of gives like, a high level overview about like, what archetypes are and chunks, how things are stored and how do you query things through systems. So really just kind of going through like all the basics of exactly what you need to know, subscenes in baking. It kind of shows you how to set this up, give some code examples. Streaming for, I guess, bringing in multiple scenes. Talks about some of the samples that are available on the GitHub. So yeah, here's kind of the tanks one that I mentioned here. This is kind of another one that was shown off in kind of one of Unity's showcase streams about kind of like the like fire brigade, where these like brigades of firefighters to put out these little fires. Going into the entities graphics package, physics package. It does talk a little bit about netcode for entities here. It's just kind of like a very brief introduction into kind of like some of the high level theory behind it and some of the sample projects they have, but there's not really a whole lot of kind of information on there. For netcode for entities specifically, stuff like the stuff on the main documentation is probably a little bit more valuable. But again, it's just like a good kind of introduction into these concepts. Of course, the character controller talks about what's on the dots roadmap. So they do kind of mention animation is they have something in the works, but not available in current versions of Unity. And they say, the most common solution is to render animated characters as game objects and kind of do a transformation sync there. does mention that there might be a little bit of overhead on there, but should suffice for most situations. And they have some, I guess, links to ones off the Unity Asset Store, which is cool too. They talk about UI because there's no ECS-based UI system. It is kind of interesting that this is kind of under the Dots roadmap page, but I'm not aware of any ECS-based UI stuff that's kind of in the works. But
doesn't it say there is currently no ECS-based?
Yeah. It says there's no currently ECS, but like, so yeah, I didn't know if like this was kind of like when I first came across this, because it says, what's on the Dots roadmap, and then you see like subheadings of animation and subheading of user interfaces.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, they basically recommend to use UI Toolkit, because I know that's kind of the main UI solution that they're pushing. But I still use the regular Unity UI, and it works quite well for me.
Yeah, I haven't gone into the UI. I made 2 projects into UI Toolkit, and I get it. Like, I get that it's nice, but it's also slightly more complex tool for some simple stuff that I usually do.
Yeah, totally. And then so then kind of towards the end here, this gets into what I think are some of the kind of more interesting parts. So this goes into evaluating dots for your project. So this kind of goes into some things like, if your code is causing CPU bottlenecks, you can consider re-implementing it as burst compiled jobs. And then, burst compiled jobs. And then it says like, I guess I can just kind of read through this here. So good news is that burst compiled jobs can usually be integrated into the majority of existing projects with relative ease, even if the project otherwise makes no use of dots. Aside from possibility of having to copy data in and out of unmanaged collections, rewriting existing code as burst compiled jobs generally requires no significant code restructuring, which is usually true. But it says this is less true for the entities package, while sometimes possible to selectively integrate entities for implementing specific features. ECS architecture tends to impose its own code structure on the whole project.
That's an understatement, I feel like. It's like, yes, you're going to have to be
100%, yeah. This kind of goes into some good reasons about why you should build a new project with entities. So one would be the project will have many static elements, such as for rendering large detailed environments, such as the original Megacity project. Or if your project has many dynamic elements with computationally heavy behaviors, like a real-time strategy game, where you might need to be doing a lot of pathfinding. One completely valid option, which is honestly probably what I fall into for the most part, is you prefer the ECS way of structuring data in code, which is arguably easier to reason about and maintain than the more common object-oriented alternative. At the very least, ECS generally makes it easier to profile in bottlenecks. Would you agree with that statement?
Yeah, for sure, 100%. I'm working in a completely object-oriented project right now, and I'm like, it's not like pulling teeth or anything, but I'm like, it's and like I can see, exactly why people, including me, preferred the encapsulation and hiding behind the object and like, oh, you just call this function and it does everything. But when you really get down to like actual hard engineering, it's one of the things that I'm making is like it's like a level generator thing, and it's a complex thing to do, and it's like it's so much easier when you do it in just not hiding anything in objects or anything. You just like write the code and don't structure any classes, don't structure any objects, just write the code that does the thing, and then you it's also weird to say, but that's the only way I can think about it. Just write the code. Don't UML diagram it in your head and then do the classes. Just write the code.
Just write the code.
Just make the data and write the code.
Yeah, no, I definitely, because I just wrapped up a client project that was just kind of regular game object mono behavior based, and I will say that it was like pretty nice for like the prototyping stages of just like getting a lot of things out there and implemented very, very easily. Being able to use some certain third-party libraries that integrated well with game objects. Then we also used netcode for game objects and was able to get up and running with that very quickly. But then, like, as the project started to kind of grow, I was like, ooh, I definitely miss ECS for some certain things. Like, it'd be really nice if I could just like query for, you know, this, and this right here. So yeah.
I feel like I'm not missing necessarily query thing. I'm missing a little bit about the uh, naturally getting the divide between data and features. But honestly, the biggest thing that I always miss is the goddamn instantiate method in entity manager instead of game object instantiates. Game object instantiates is so insanely slow.
Oh, I know.
Like,
Yeah, I had to like create my whole own pooling solution for something, and I'm like, oh man.
yeah. And you like sometimes you work on a client project or your own thing or whatever, you're in mono behavior world or game object world, and you like you profile, and then you like do something and you realize, oh, it's a game object instantiate blip in the profiling, and like, well, I guess we're here. we're on
here.
an island. So yeah, it sucks. I am surprised that they are not pushing the last sent. I don't remember how long you came into this thing, but when they are like, they're like, oh well, if you don't need that much CPU performance, maybe ECS is not necessarily the thing. But I'm like, well, we're on so many low power devices, and they are. If you decide later to have a target low power devices, says in the end, I'm just like, I'm trying to convince my friends who work in the mobile space, like, dots, your phones will not get hot and you will have more battery time and your customer will be happier. Like, that's super nice. Like, why not? Like, push that harder. Yeah. Imagine like you playing a game and it's just like your phone is like just there's nothing to do. I'm just hanging around and running this game, which is like nothing.
It's time to bring back Project Tiny.
Yeah, that would be something. Yes, it's so sad that they shelved that. I was excited about that. Yeah. All right. Anyway, continue.
But yeah, and actually, I think the way that they kind of structured this part was saying, like, you know, if you already have a project, you know, you could kind of conceivably implement burst compiled jobs with relative ease, but this would be less true for entities package. However, if you're creating a new project, these are some reasons you might want to consider. But yeah, I agree that they probably should have, you know, mobile as one of the options. But the last one they say here is if your project is a competitive multiplayer game with fast action, such as a shooter, requires authoritative servers, client-side prediction, and a good player experience, which aren't supported in netcode for game objects, but of course are in netcode for entities. What else does this say? On the other hand, many games are primarily bottlenecked by the GPU, in which case entities and the rest of DOT's packages and related technologies might not help because DOTS only improves CPU efficiency. Still, if DOTS can help you do the same amount of work in less CPU time, this leaves more headroom for additional features, and extra headroom can also greatly help if you decide to target lower powered devices. There you go.
Yeah, I know. I read it, but I'm like, okay. You should shove it front and like,
yeah, as opposed to kind of like
will be happier.
As opposed to kind of like a footnote almost.
Yeah, it's like, I think Casey Muratori has this talk where he talks about like there's zero where they research that shows anything but like if the software is faster, everybody's happier. That's 100% true.
And you make more money.
Yeah, and you make more money. Yeah. So then, yeah. But I guess some people just will live in game object land for a while, and it's, you know, it's fine.
It's all good. They'll learn eventually. All good.
Everybody Dots monster race.
Yeah, right. We should get some shorts with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Really, what?
True.
And then yeah, it goes into some games made with dots. So there's I like the first one they lead with is bare butt boxing, which
Looks good.
yeah,
The
I guess
box looks
just kind of
good.
like a casual, fun little game here. This one, Hysteria, they've been showing off at some of their games, kind of like or some of their presentations, kind of like a multiplayer shooter with this kind of like interesting glitch effect that happens where you can kind of like travel to a different world or something.
V
V
Rising.
Rising, Stunlock Studios, your alma
Yeah.
mater.
Yeah.
So yeah, of
My
course,
old
this is
friends.
a very big game made with dots and really interesting stuff here. This is VR game Zenith: The Last City, which I think they used VR for, or they used ECS for like certain things, but then they still had game objects for a lot of things. I think especially kind of like on the visuals. But it's a big MMO VR title, which does use a lot of stuff like that. They do mention the
Mega
Mega City
City.
Metro sample, and where's just read the instructions? What the heck?
I don't know. Maybe I'm bad at reaching out. I don't know how this works, but yeah, it is what it is.
And then, I think this stuff at the end here is just also really good information. So the appendix concepts related to ECS. So this again talks a little bit about memory allocation and garbage collection. Goes into some pretty good detail on, again, some of the issues with it, as well as kind of how DOT solves this and how there's different allocators for temp, persistent, and they also have the temp job as well as the world update allocator, which is a very good one.
Yeah.
And then just kind of, again, some general information on multi-threaded programming, memory and CPU cache. Some good diagrams on CPU cache, costs of object-oriented programming. They talk about some of the theoretical benefits of object-oriented programming.
That never pans out.
And then some of the performance costs of object-oriented programming here.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely like, again, a lot of good info in here, and some things specific on data-oriented design, and just kind of some of the main data-oriented design principles, and talks about some, and then so last line of the book is summed up as a warning: premature abstraction is the root of all evil.
Yeah, I agree with that. But it's
So, yeah.
so nice to abstract. Oh my god. That's super tricky, right? Knowing when to abstract and when to not.
Yeah,
You're like, I can
100%.
see a pattern here and I can spend an hour
Like, oh,
doing
this
this
would
much
be so
sooner.
cool.
Yes. All right.
But so that is the Unity Dots ebook, again available right now. I put a link in the chat, and then I'll put one in the description when we're done here. But super cool that Unity is doing this. I think there's a lot of really good learning resources, especially for people who have fairly limited experience with data-oriented design and just kind of almost performance-aware programming type concepts. Really good introduction into why the stuff that we talk about on this show every week is important, and hopefully it gets more people interested in structuring their games in these types of way. But do you have any overall thoughts on the Dots ebook?
No, it looks good. Maybe not as advanced as maybe someone like me and you would hope for, but I'm sure.
Right. Yeah, I totally understand why they have to start with something like
Yeah.
this to, again, just kind of give people a clear thing to read through,
And it's
to
like,
at least kind of know where to start.
yeah, and it's super hard to make enticing learning material for advanced users. It's like we have also very specific, unique problems we're facing, and it's like they can obviously not reach all of those different.
It's kind of hard to generalize solutions and kind of like help everyone out. So I think that's kind of like one of the things that I want to do with this show is just kind of like, we're not saying this is the way you should be doing things, but we're saying this is the way that I solved this problem. So Yeah, just to get
Yeah,
people thinking, right? Kind of give
yeah.
people some like options of some things they could try out.
Find some nitty gritty of some very specific things. It's kind of nice, even though you don't need that specific thing yourself. Maybe just seeing this thing. Oh, this is a very specific case I never seen before, and maybe I never do it. But it's very nice to see how it's solved by somebody else.
Yeah, yeah, hundred
Yeah.
percent. All right, well, cool. And yeah, with that, we can move over into our cash hit, the Unity Dots quick tip of the week. And you're going to be showcasing some things for us.
All
So,
right. See
what
if
do you
my
got for us?
we didn't test the screen share before. So if I
Uh-oh.
crash, you're
Yeah.
gonna have to. Let's see here if I can. That should be the case. And add to stage. There we go.
Bingo.
All right. So let's see here. Let's start here. Debug values in Unity, and like having some way to print it or whatever you need to do to show the values that you need to show. If it's in a log or if it's in on graph or something. I think this might be obvious to some people, but dots is like the most. I think the most easiest way to deal with this, and I just thought I show how I've structured the debug printing in just read instructions to like this is how easy it can be, or this is how clean. Clean is the most. It's not necessarily easy, but clean is the best way to phrase it.
Yeah, so it's like actually it can be useful to you because you can interpret it properly, I guess.
Yeah, and it's like, oh, I need to figure this one out. Oh, I don't need to like stitch in a bunch of annoying code into my already annoying gameplay code. I can just have this other part which is very, very separate, and it's just, I mean, it's obviously possible to do a separate kind of a debug printing system in mono behavior world too, but in dots I think it's just way cleaner and easier. So this is this is one mono behavior that represented debug you HUD in just instructions, and obviously it needs to be a mono behavior because it's supposed to be shown on the screen. Like we looked at, dots doesn't have an UI thing and might never have. And we have a bunch of stuff. It's not really relevant what we have here, but you can see some FPS counter for start game, some buttons, some tracked values, and stuff like that. And this is just like UI elements on the screen. And what I do here is that I have a system that I set up in a way that if I run it in a build, this attribute makes it so this doesn't get created at all. So there's nothing.
Nice.
All of the debug types are just discarded unless you run it through debug. I guess it's a startup. It's not necessarily build. It's more about if you run the build or in the editor in debug mode or not.
Right. So if you
Boolean.
create a release build, then that system won't be included, right?
Yes, it will be. I don't mean preprocessor define. I mean like it's like a literal bool that you can specify on startup with the easy settings, which I'm trying to release on the yeah. I can talk about that later. But so I set it up, and the thing that I think is really nice here, and this is, I think this requires to be as clean as I have it. You require addressables almost, but the thing is that this system starts up, and then I have this thing, and this is an asset loader. And just imagine somehow this could be addressables where you just get the asset that you need wherever it might be stored. So you have a prefab of your HUD, right? So like you instantiate this HUD and you put it into wherever you need to have it. Did you? Am I here? I don't hear anything. Oh, you muted yourself, maybe.
Yeah, I was just typing. So
Yeah. Don't worry. So you instantiate this your HUD,
and I deactivate it here because I may be not needing it straight away. And then I put it, somewhere in a hierarchy so it shows properly in the canvas. And then what I do is this debug HUD system has this reference to the actual UI element. And in update in this one, I do, for example, I put the FPS counter on the screen and stuff like that. So I calculate that in the update loop, right? So I do a bunch of this is standard debug things. I have a few tracked value. That's not really the thing that I want to show, but I have some things that lets me do stuff, show stuff on the screen in a convenient way. But the thing that I think here where dots comes in really nicely is I have this very advanced debug system for my crawlers where I debug how they move with a lot of stuff going on visually to be able to find how they are moving wrong or right. So if we go over to this one, we have this other thing, crawler movement overlay, a system base, and it's also debug, and it's in a specific group, debug overlay. So here's where dots is really, really convenient. You make this system, which is, maybe you have some way of shutting it down if you don't need it, like I do, or if you don't need to debug. And then you can just then you query. So for example here, local world, physics collider, crawler state, target. You query for the things you need to do, you need to examine, and you can have it, without burst. And the way you can query out all the data you need, and you can shove them into debug visuals, debug logs, debug tracking values, whatever. And you can have this in its own little nicely tight system that's just not there if you don't need it. It's so nice to just have this completely external system which just pokes into the exact entity data that you want to show. And this might be for most people is very obvious, but I think we talked about it earlier. You said sometimes that with dots is so nice to just be able to query for something.
Yeah.
I think this quick tip is just don't realize that just being able to take a thing that you need to do and just move it out, because you can just query for the things you do, and it can be completely detached from everything else except for this. You pick out the things you want to show on the screen, and then you're done, and it lives in its box.
It doesn't have to be
and it's
buried
zero.
in some mono behavior that could potentially create overhead or interface with things in weird ways and unexpected ways. And
yeah, and here you can see this is the debug HUD system that I talked about. That's in the other, and I pick up that system like normally, like you pick up another system, and then I just shove some data over to that system, like normal. But this is so such a clean appendix hook.
I like that. You just say, look at the system, track this value, prepend a little bit of text on it saying, what the title of it is, and then put the data in it. I like that.
Yeah, and then you can just take a few things that you want to, a few system that you want to poke and prod into, with some queries that you want to poke and prod into some entities, and you just put it wherever you need it, and it just lives in its own system, and you don't have to worry about it, and you can just turn it off, and you're there's nothing that will be affected by turning it on or off. And obviously you can structure game of mono behavior to behave the same way, but I think this shows up much easier, because you can get your entity data without any other system or the entity itself even knowing about it. Basically, you just I need this data, and nobody will be bothered by you picking out extra data. Like I said, maybe obvious for a lot of experienced dots developer, but this is cool. This is clean, I think, and very
agree.
good.
I don't know if you have the project open, but are you able to show us kind of what this debug view looks like at all, or
My laptop will just get borked
fry?
if I fry. I'm sorry.
No, I was just curious.
The plan was to have my new computer here, but
Oh,
my
okay.
girlfriend got sick and we couldn't go and do the road thing where we swapped computers and stuff. So I was planning on having
You didn't want to
my
bring the computer with you on the bus?
No, it's like 18 kilograms. It's a very, very nice big heat sink and big nice cage. So I think maybe the bus is slightly too cumbersome. But next time maybe I can. Maybe in 2 weeks or something I can show some stuff off in practice from my game. Because I've tried a few times and it's just like my laptop with two monitors and everything is just like. So sorry about that.
No, that's all good. I still think it's a cool solution and everything. Yeah, it's very clean.
And I think, and I have several of these, so you can like if I go and find the this one, you can see here, pillar beast, jumper, crawler, item pickup, all of this. Like so, oh, I need to debug the item pickup system. I just have a little bit here. I just have its own system.
Yeah,
it just
that's all you need.
Picks out a few things and it shows the label so I can see the thing on the ground. If like, why can't I pick this up? Is it on the ground where I expect it to be? Oh, like that. And like this thing, this is not performant, right? It's performant on a good development computer because
Sure.
who cares if you have a very nice. But the thing is, this doesn't run. And if you play in release, so it doesn't matter, and then you have this nice easy attach detach.
Do you hear that?
Yeah, is having an earthquake.
No, some guy with a very loud speaker system is driving by.
Oh,
rattling
right.
my whole house.
That's good.
What is that I am draw? Is that from a library or is that something you created?
No, that's a library that's not burst compatible, as you can see.
Right.
But it's I think it's actually like it's called I am draw. I can.
Is it just like based off of I am GUI or something?
No, it's just like straight up custom. Let's see here. This is the thing. I am draw. Yeah.
Oh,
It's
okay,
just
cool.
Some custom shaders and shapes for immediate drawing. I think I bought this like I don't know 4 years ago, so I don't remember.
Yeah.
I just needed something to shove, debug
just do some
draw
exactly.
array
Yeah,
is not good
that's
enough.
probably before that A-line asset came out too. So
Yeah, I haven't actually integrated that yet. I'm very curious to see how that fits into the code base.
yeah, because I mean it works in
Chicken Soup.
burst and job context and everything, which is way cool.
Yeah, I looked through the source code. I bought it and I looked through the source code, and they basically just made their own like entity command buffer thingy,
Oh,
so
cool.
that you can just produce whatever you need inside of burst, which is exactly what I would do, except that it takes a lot of time and it's probably
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, that was maybe slightly long, quick tip, but yeah, I just
No,
wanted
that's all
to,
good
like-
because I mean it kind of flows into our main topic here, which is debugging in Unity dots. So
yeah,
again, I had my internet out all week, so I didn't have a whole lot of time to create like a good in-depth topic. But I think this still would be a good opportunity to just kind of like go over some basic dots debugging concepts. Again, this probably is like, pretty familiar things to a lot of the more experienced developers of the group here, but definitely good to kind of like go over these things and, maybe we'll kind of pick up on some things along the way. So I think I just kind of want to start in the editor, going over some of the kind of main debug windows, because Unity actually gives you 5 different debug windows, which you can access by going to Window and Entities. And then you see they're all here, right here. So there's the hierarchy, components, systems, archetypes, and journaling. So most of these are pretty straightforward about what they do, but I do just kind of want to go over each of these and maybe give you a couple examples about how I use each of these to just kind of, again, give you some ideas to help you when you're running into some issues, how you may kind of end up going about debugging things. So the entities hierarchy here, this one is probably the most frustrating of all the debug windows, just because of it, throwing so many random errors and it just looking exactly like the regular hierarchy. Like, I mean, if we kind of flip back and forth between these, I mean, it's just, basically a hierarchy with all the stuff in there. But yeah, it doesn't have like all the same things you can do. Like, for example, one thing that I do, and watch this, completely work here, but a lot of times, like I use kind of the up and down arrows to kind of, select different things. And then you can use like the right arrow to kind of like expand these things. So it's just kind of like, I kind of use the arrow keys to navigate around the hierarchy. So you can't really do this in the entities hierarchy. So you can go up and down, and then if you hit left or right, nothing happens. You can't expand that. So it's like, okay, I got to come over here and click this, then now come over here and then do all this. So yeah,
that's very annoying.
It's just like a little thing, but it's still like completely messes with your workflow because it looks exactly like the entities hierarchy or just the regular hierarchy, but it doesn't have the same functionality. You also can't like multi-select. You can only single select. Like I'm holding shift right down. And yeah, anyways, enough about my gripes with the entities hierarchy. When you are in play mode and not in full screen play mode, it is very useful for, seeing what entities exist. You can just, click on an entity in here. It shows you all the values here. So this is kind of the authoring mode. And then of course we can go over to our runtime mode, see what the actual, data component values are. So pretty simple here. It is cool that we also have like some of the systems in here. And then I think if we add like some system components, I don't think I have any like custom systems with system components. They'll kind of show up in here as well. Like I think.
I think so.
Yeah. Sometimes you get things like this where you have like entity 79-1. This basically just if you have an entity without a name, then it just kind of shows the index and version number. So again, it is like a little bit limited because a lot of times you might end up with a bunch of these entities if you're just kind of spawning a bunch and not assigning a name, or maybe you're spawning a bunch of entities all with the same name. It kind of gets hard to figure out what entity you actually want. So that's where some of the other kind of windows come into play here. So if we go over to, say, the components window, I can drag this one over here. So this one shows all of the components that you've created. So most of these are actually a lot of the built-in Unity components. Like, there's a bunch of things with like the entities graphics as well as physics and all this. But of course you can, like filter down into some of your own custom components. So if I have, say, this rewind data, I can click on this, and now in the inspector, we get a ton of good information about things specific to this component. So this is kind of like goes along the lines of not necessarily debugging, but more just like figuring out how best to structure your project. So it kind of gives you a little bit of information about, what are all the, actual members of this particular data. And then kind of going into the attributes, this is where things kind of get a little bit interesting, where it shows, the size of this component and the size in chunk and chunk or component alignment in chunk and all this. So yeah, just kind of like good information about, how you can kind of structure your things in here. Now, over this relationships tabs, this part is very useful because it shows basically all of the entities that have this component. So for example, this player entity, this has this rewind data component. And I can just click this little button here, and this will basically select that player entity in the inspector. It also shows us what systems are operating on this given component. So we can kind of go into here and we can see that each of these systems just has a single query for this rewind data. So this can kind of give you a little bit more information about, if you're having some like weird unexpected values on a given component, well, you can search for this component and you can see, okay, here are all the systems that are affecting this component. So I can say, okay, let's look through the player input system and see, is that giving us some weird data for some reason? Okay, it's not. Let's go to, say, the actual rewind system. All right, let's look in here. And then you can kind of see, okay, so I see that, we have read and write access to this. Maybe something in here is kind of writing to things incorrectly. So this kind of just gives you like a good place to start about saying, again, here are all the places in your application that this is being modified. So it just kind of gives you like a good starting place to look. Now, that may not always give you, exactly what you're looking for. So you may need to go a step further and kind of use the entities journaling window. So we can go over here and go over to the journaling window. By the way, Tobias, how often do you use kind of some of these built-in entities like that? The entities hierarchy is a pretty common one, but like the components window, the systems window we'll go into later, and the journaling window, things like this.
I use 3 of these things all the time, and it's the entities hierarchy with the filtering, it's the systems, and it's the relationships between stuff. That's the 3 ones I use all the time. I use the like component and archetypes every now and then. I peek into them, but that I think it depends on the complexity of your project. And since I built the whole code base myself from my game,
you have a good mental model of it already. So
yeah, I don't really need to figure out what components is on what. I just need to find the actual data on entities, and then components window doesn't really do much for me. I already know what components I'm looking for, what's on what.
Yeah. I think the components window is helpful for those times where you're just like scratching your head about like, why is this data like this? And then you can kind of, again, go over to this relationships tab, and then you see like, oh, it's being affected by that system. It shouldn't be doing that. And then you go over and see, oh, okay.
But I usually, if you press an entity in the hierarchy window, you get also, the that relationship all the way up to the right.
Yeah.
That's the way I look through it.
Right. Yeah. You're going on a more kind of, per entity basis.
Yeah. I'm like, the entity is not behaving, and you saw the debug code that I have. I often have like I code specifically some filtering which picks out exactly what I want, because often some piece of the data is kind of tricky to grab with generic debug tools. So you need to write some custom code to like pick out the exact thing, and then you spit the ID out in the log or something. You pick that up, you put it into the entities hierarchy, and then you can like sort of track it around. And sometimes just in mid gameplay, it's just really tricky to follow these things. So then it's generally just single entities that I'm like just like, there we go. Okay, pause. And then I'm like trying to piece together what the entity is doing with some other system. So yeah, specific entities are normally what I'm looking through.
That makes sense. And so I guess kind of one of the kind of common paths that I might take is one of 2 ways, where first one would be like, say, using this components window. Again, I can click on this, say, rewind data, go over to the relationships. I find the player here. Then I can do this, which opens this up. By default, it'll just go to this components portion. And then I can come over to this relationships tab and see, what are all the systems affecting this? And then, so for example, where's the rewind system? So yeah, then I can go over here and see under the rewind system, what data is being accessed and changed on each given system.
Yeah, and that little window icon on the end of the name, That
Yeah.
one, the top one on the system name, that one helps me a shit ton all the time. Just pressing that and like,
Doing
I'm
this, and then
here.
and it brings you right to the system here.
Yeah, that's like, that's because like, I don't know, 30% of all gameplay errors are ordering problems for me for some reason.
True. Yeah, it would be kind of interesting if like Unity forced you to order your systems by default.
I can't decide if I'm in this group and I'm before this and after that, if that's enough. Sometimes it just doesn't really fit how I would like to do stuff, and I would like to have a more like a specific ordering, like number indexing thing, like script
Like a
script execution
priority
order.
value or something almost.
No, like a script execution order, like all normal
yeah, okay.
behaviors type style. But like, and I think this is a better simplification. But sometimes it's just like, of course I can get the explicit order through update before and after attributes. But sometimes you just want to like, just let me just put all of this in this order. That's it. Nothing. And I don't want to like put the update before and after on all of these different systems to make sure they are in the right order.
Right,
I just
right,
want to
right.
declare once this group, and then these 10 systems, just put them in this order straight up in just one place. That would be a very nice addition. And you could probably make that if you make your own bootstrapping code, but that would be probably kind of...
Or you can just schedule the jobs from the same system.
Yeah, well, a few. I guess you can spread out the jobs into different files, but some of my systems and jobs are way too big to not have in several different files. So, but
Fair.
yeah, there could be different files, different jobs, but all in the same system. That's true.
Right.
Yeah.
And then, so then the other way that you could kind of go about diving deep into some of these relationships is kind of like what you mentioned about kind of going through some of the filtering. So you can, basically filter out things by different components. Is that typically what you're doing for filtering, is like looking up, certain components, and then it shows you like the list of all
Yeah.
components
All
that,
components and
you can
all
say this
components
of,
and
like,
entity index.
rewind data. And then,
you
so we have this guy with the rewind data here.
Yeah. The entity index is actually surprisingly useful, and it didn't have that in the old version. It was so annoying. I made a debug tool which lets me select my own based on entity ID.
So how do you typically like keep track of the entity ID for like a given entity you might be tracking? Like, do you just kind of look that up and just kind of remember what it is for that session, or how do you?
No, the debug tools I have print them in scene as a label or in the log. Yeah,
so you can see like if there's an entity running around, it'll have like a 24 above its head, and then
yeah.
That's super handy. That's really smart.
Can I just steal the screen for a second?
Go ahead. Yeah.
I can just, like, here, what we looked at, item pickup overlay. So here we have the position. I pick out the position, I color it middle, and then I said NID, which stands for net ID. And this isn't the ID for the actual entity, but this is a network persistent ID. So I just print the network persistent ID straight in the scene in the 3D-dimensional world. And I also have a tool which translates the net ID to entity ID and back and forth. So then I just so I can look around and I can see like all my weapons or items which this item pickup overlay can track. And like, it's everything synced together on all my different clients and all that stuff. Because like, there's a shotgun, it has the net ID 2, and there's the shotgun and has net ID 5. Wait a minute. Okay, I'm not looking at the same shotgun. That's why they are screwed up positioning. So yeah, you can go back.
No, that's That's a super smart solution, because there's definitely been times where it's like trying to inspect something, but it's hard to select or something, and you know.
Yeah.
So if you just had that entity ID right above it and filter out for the entity ID,
Yeah. And all when I made the crawler algorithm, I had all of the different ray castings and stuff, and their network ID and their entity ID written on them in 3 dimension. But also, that completely breaks down if you go over like 200 crawlers. It just like chugs any, because immediate mode drawing is super slow in batch when you do it a lot. So you get all of these, and same thing with what you're showing here. If you do that too much, your performance, if you have too much of these at the same time, performance is just gonna tank. And a complex enough game is just gonna chug on in 10 FPS. So it's tricky.
No, 100%. So then another one that you kind of mentioned, the systems window here. So of course this one basically just lists out all the systems in your game. They are in hierarchical order, so that if you do put them in a group, they'll show up under the group, which is listed as a folder. And then they're basically ordered top to bottom from first to run to last to run, so you kind of know the specific ordering. And then of course you can inspect any of these given systems. It shows you the queries of what data it's reading from and writing to. And again, you can go to the relationships tab to see which given entities are affected by that system. So again, super helpful for those situations where you're like, okay, I know this system is running, but let me make sure that it's running on the entity that I think it should. And like, okay, no, there's only one player here. This should be running on like at least 10 other entities. Okay, let's go to the query, and then we can see what things that are required in that query. And then now we can go back to those other entities and say, oh, they don't have this component. That's why they're not, on there. So
excellent example. That's like so many times you have that issue in ECS. Like, oh, right, I need to add this in the baker.
Yeah, I will say that these debug tools, they flow really nicely with each other, because this relationships tab where I can say, let me click on this player and I can go right here, and then here's the turbo physics systems, and then you can just go one thing to the next really easily. So that's one thing that I like a lot.
Did you get to code a lot of ECS with the old entity debugger?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. That was
or it was just all in one window. Yeah. There were some things that were kind of nice for sure.
But this exactly what you described, the chaining of everything together is like so much nicer.
Yeah, definitely. I know I said I was gonna.
And I just should add, I can look it up actually when. Well, you can drive this inspector window quite easily from your own code. So I have a network component inspector thing where I can I want to find the entity with this specific my net ID, and then I can put that onto this inspector that you're looking at right now.
Really?
And you can continue with what you're doing, and I can just check that code in my projects.
Okay.
That
so it actually shows up in the relationships tab kind of thing. You mean? Or
no, you can just call a entity editor function and set what entity is showing up in the inspector. So you can select like if you select the entity in the entities hierarchy, if you just press that one, you get a specific. You can drive that value yourself pretty easily. So you can say which entity,
You mean the one that you selected? You mean?
Yeah. You can select. Yeah. I can show that code. I have it somewhere.
Cool.
Because I use it all the time, because I have basically an entity hierarchy inspector, but just for my network object.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Cool. So yeah, what I was saying is, yeah, I know I was going to talk about the journaling window. I still will, but I think it just makes sense to show off this last kind of simple and straightforward window, which is the archetypes window. This is another window that that doesn't necessarily always have the best uses for like debugging purposes, but again, extremely helpful for project structuring. So what you can do with this is we can say go down to here. The annoying thing about this is I'll probably go to the entity scene here. So the archetypes, they're all just this like massive long like hex value, and it's really weird because like it has this like field that looks like you can like edit it, or you can say like archetype cool guy, right? And then you have that, but it doesn't like update this. And then if you click off and click back on, you just lost that custom thing. So it would be nice to say like, oh yeah, here's the archetype for the player. Right? And then, anytime that you're going to inspect this, then like exactly where the player archetype is. Anyways, the archetype basically is just kind of like the makeup of components, but it's really helpful for, again, project structure because it shows you, at the given time that you're inspecting it, how many entities fit under that archetype, what is kind of the total chunk capacity, and then, it kind of shows the unused entities. So that's kind of like in that kind of pre-allocated chunk of entity memory, kind of subtracting out the entities that already exists. How much room do you have left over for new entities to spawn before a new chunk is allocated? So again, it's very helpful for figuring out again the project structure. So knowing when you're kind of running into some potential I get, how do I say, like the how you might need to like restructure your components because maybe you have some components that are very large in size and now you can't fit a large number of entities inside of the chunk. So how do you kind of reduce that memory footprint a little bit? So again, you can kind of click through here and figure out, you kind of, again, got to do a little bit of, kind of use that like mental model of your project to know like, okay, so all of these components, this is, this particular type of entity. So it's a little bit of a weird window, but it does give you some good information into kind of the memory footprint of your different entities. You have anything else to say on the archetypes window before you show off?
No, I know that one thing that Rasmus talked about with V Rising was that I think I mentioned it. They had very, very large AI components.
Oh,
because
yeah.
And that's one of those things where this window would probably help you like just inspect like, oh damn, they have like this AI component which keeps track of a NPC boss or something, and it's like, oh, that's you can only fit like, you can barely even fit one of those into a chunk probably because it's so big when you just stack values and states and AI things on top of each other. So I guess that's in that case you could probably find the exact AI boss archetype here and like realize what's going on and pretty easily like try to trim it down a little bit, because sometimes when you nest enough structures, it's get a little bit lost in the sauce of what's actually big here.
Right. Yeah, if you have like a couple of structs that are like 64 bytes each, and you have like two of those in a component, like it doesn't visually look like there's a lot, but then you pop open this and you see, oh holy cow, this is 500 bytes or whatever.
Yeah, and then maybe you have like some strategically annoying misalignment of the bytes, and you like just push it down like, I don't know, 128 bytes for no reason, and you're like, oh damn it. Like and if you for the beginners or for not super advanced, then you just see the number is good, but maybe for people who maybe work with very closely and know what's supposed to be, then this can be just a tell, like, maybe this number is a little slightly too high. Maybe I got one of those auto misalignment things going down, and I can reorder it a little bit and make it more efficient.
Right.
Yeah. I found a code if you want to.
Yeah, let's see it.
Do you can you pull up a piece of code from this project?
Sure.
Just anywhere, and I can just tell you exactly. So if you just anywhere, you just do unity.entities. .editor .entity selection proxy.
I don't have this. Do I need?
They maybe removed it on a newer version. This is not the. This is supposed to be in it's in 1.016. Anyway, I can show my screen and it's fine. I just maybe they renamed it or something in a later version, because that's 1.2, I guess.
Yeah.
I'll just push my screen up here and I can show you. So here. So that's just a thing that you have where we can go like this. You just say which world, and this entity is the one that shows up in your inspector. So create and select an instance of an entity, select wrapping the specified entity. This separate. I don't know. It's just, this is what I use when I just select an entity and it just shows up in my inspector. So that's how I debug my networked game objects, where when I don't have when their entity index is not really the relevant part, but their net ID is the thing I'm trying to keep track of and understand what's going on. Then I have this drop down a list of entities and their net IDs, and then I just I want to select the one with net ID 5, and then it just finds that and selects the actual entity with a specific entity index, like that. So
cool. I like that.
Yep, pretty nice. Entity selection proxy dot select entity. It took me ages to find it. I had
I'm impressed that you found it. I wouldn't even have thought to look for something like that.
I just realized that I need some custom inspection tools to follow my network data, and I remember I loaded the whole shebang of 170 Unity addressable assemblies into the debugger, and then I just scattered a ton of breakpoints into the whole system, and I pressed an entity in the entity hierarchy, and I just hopefully this hits one of the breakpoints and I can follow where it's going with this selection. That's how I found it.
Nice.
Yeah. All right.
Wait, because you're on 1.0.16, right?
Let's see here. Yeah, 1.0.16. I don't think I modified this code, but it could be that this is not public. I don't remember. Maybe if you do a symbol search for entities.
So it pops up. What version is this that it popped up in? Popped up in 0.1, the entity selection property proxy.
I put you on the.
Cool.
Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah, so it showed up in version 0.1, and this is 0 or 1.0.16, and I did a search for it, and it's not in here, unless it's under one of these classes, but I don't think it is, right?
Huh.
Hierarchy search provider, yeah. Weird.
I don't think I've made any modifications. I can try to just start this up in...
But
no, I don't have the... Anyway, continue.
Anyways, what I saw when I was looking this up, go to entities version 1.2, we have Entities 1.2.3.
Jesus Christ.
So
Damn
we'll save our little changelog overview for next week because
Cliffhanger.
little teaser for you there. So anyways, I guess last thing that I did want to show over here in the editor, the last one is the journaling window. So journaling window, the way that this works is you can basically hit this record button and then it starts recording, and you can see this thing is screaming. I mean, it's been like going for 5 seconds and we have about 20,000 records. So this literally just records everything that the ECS side does. All of Unity's stuff, all of the stuff that you're doing, anytime you get write access to a component, every time you set component data, anytime you get read access to a component, anytime you create an entity, destroy an entity, literally everything here. So it has this whole thing of records here. And again, you can kind of filter these out. So you can filter out by record index, record type, the frame number, if something happened on a particular frame, world name, world sequence number, the system that is actually that particular operation is running in, the executing system, the origin system, which I think if you, I think this is like if you schedule like command buffer operations like from one system, but then it like plays back in another system.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
You can filter out by entity name, entity index, entity count, component type name, component type index, component count, data value. So yeah, there's a bunch of things that you can filter on. What this is helpful for the most part, is again, those times where something weird happens and you don't know where it's coming from. You can take a quick snapshot of the event happening kind of around that time. And then again, kind of use some of these filtering, say, okay, I know what's happening on this entity. Is there any time where, some particular thing is getting its data component set, and then like maybe it's like being set, but then it's like being overwritten by something else, because again, all these things are happening like in order, so you get like good information about the order that things are happening. So yeah, the thing is, it really is a lot of data, and you really have to like add in some good filtering to like sift through this to find exactly what you're looking for. But again, it can be really helpful for, especially times where like maybe an entity gets destroyed and you like just like kind of randomly, and you don't have like any information about that entity before. Well, you can go to like the destroy event, you can get the index from it. Once you have that index, now you can search against the index and see what systems were running on that entity. Even though that entity no longer exists, you still have that historical record of it. So yeah, again, it's a really cool thing. It's not something that I use every day, but for those situations where you're just completely scratching your head, and the kind of traditional methods of gathering information about things are not really helpful, again, this can be a good sort of place to look.
This is a little bit Unity being able to flex the muscles of what ECS can do, because like this would be 100%. A nightmare in game object world.
True.
Yeah, so in this case, it's like pretty clear cut how the data is flowing in an ECS world, and you can just in big quotation mark, just record it and to a list. So yeah. It's a very good tool, but it's a sledgehammer to solve, and it's like so powerful but complicated and hard to use unless you know what you're gonna do with it.
Yeah. I mean, it is quite literally information overload. Just like all this stuff, and then I think we can even add. Yeah, we can even add like the other, executing system and the entities that are affected by it, and it's a lot. So yeah, you really got to filter down if you want to kind of use the journaling window effectively. But I like it a lot, and then if you want, I guess you can even like save this off to a file if you want to like, reference something later on. So yeah.
You could probably do some fancy footwork with it and get it into a Excel sheet with a nice bar like graph or
Yeah.
something.
Well,
To track.
all the like API stuff for this is all available. So I know you can hook into this with your own custom code very easily.
Yeah, there's way more useful than people think to just print out comma separated values and shove it into a Excel graph sometimes, and this one can be piped all the way through that.
Yeah. And then
Yeah.
once you're in Excel, you can do whatever you want with it. You can do your own visualization or whatever.
Yeah, when I debugged the movement smoothing in Just Read Instructions and developed that algorithm to do the interpolation between different lost packages and stuff, then I just printed a bunch of values into the log and then just imported into Google Sheets and like, huh, this looks straight until this point, and then I can deduce if it's good or not. Very surprisingly useful to do that, because drawing graphs are not always the easiest thing to get but Excel or Google Sheet does it very nicely.
No doubt. Okay, is that all I had for the editor? I think so, yeah. And then we can kind of go through this stuff fairly quickly, just kind of some things that I wanted to mention over in the IDE. Well, actually, one last thing that I do want to point out in the Unity editor is a lot of times you will see errors happening. Actually, I can probably get an error to show up fairly easily here. Yeah. So we have, this error here. So of course, typically in regular Unity, you could just kind of like double click on this and it brings you right to the spot in your code where, the issue happened. Unfortunately, with Unity ECS, it basically just brings you to the code that calls the debug log exception, which, is 0% useful. So luckily, most of the time, if it's something of your, happening in your own code, you can go in here and say, okay, so here's kind of some stuff that's happening in the Unity collections package. You can get a little bit of more information saying, well, yeah, so this is saying like it's an out of range in the particular container. You'll see that it's checking the range. It's a collection. You kind of know you're looking for like an unsafe list array out of bounds. And then here we go into my actual code here. So I can click this link, and then this link will bring me to the portion of the code where I'm accessing this list and it going out of bounds. So again, you kind of do have to do like an extra quick little step of digging there.
And one should add that if you really need to like figure out line by line issues like this through the stack trace, and you can run it without burst, that will probably help the debugger find the exact line. Sometimes it gets a little bit scrambled with burst.
True. That actually is one thing that I wanted to mention. I don't know if you saw it. Did you see the video that CodeMonkey put up the other day?
No, maybe that's something I should see.
So it's a funny video. It's not that long, but he was like talking about how he was actually working on a DOS project and he was doing it on livestream, and he got some like random error that was being thrown, like a null reference exception, like being thrown. It was like in the on destroy part of his system, but it was happening just like during regular gameplay. And he's like, what the heck? Like, why am I getting a null reference exception here? Like, it's not destroying. So he put out like all these like debug.log statements like around the line of code that it was saying that was wrong, and then like none of those things were being printed out. Like, it was just throwing the error. And he's like, what? That makes no sense at all. Luckily, Danny happened to be in the chat during the live stream and told him that sometimes the debug lines are off by one line. So he actually ended up having to go up a line, which was in his on update function, and then he immediately saw, oh, that sprite or whatever it was wasn't being set, and that's where he
Yeah,
was getting the null
yeah,
reference from.
yeah,
So be aware of that sometimes, even though, Unity says that it's one particular line of code, sometimes you may need to go up or down a couple lines of code to see where the
yeah.
actual error is. So,
And there's a handful of errors you can get into the inherent ECS, like the actual Unity's ECS code, where you can use it slightly wrong. I don't remember exactly, where you get two errors. Both of them are sort of, actual errors, but the second one is the one that is relevant. The first one is a red herring, and yeah, I just I had that a bunch of times for some reason in just read instructions, and it just drove me nuts a few times. And I read in
right.
the forum, like, somebody like, that error, the one you see there, that's completely relevant. Well, it is an error that actually
But
happens,
it's more of like a
but
symptom of like the
yeah,
error under it,
but
basically.
the one printed after, that's the one that actually causes everything. Like,
Because
yeah,
yeah, it's like you're used to in just like regular C-based languages, you get like a flood of errors because like when one thing goes wrong, like it's going to
yeah,
cascade beyond that. So you always look at the first error, but
yes,
not always the
some,
case.
yeah.
So yeah, those were a couple things that I did want to point out as far as error messages go. And then I know one thing that we've talked about a bunch of times on the show, which has helped me immensely, especially for this project, is just doing the simple thing of setting a breakpoint and just stepping through the code. So, and actually I can do this in live time here. So we actually hit the little, this is in JetBrains Writer. Of course, there's, similar ways to do it in Visual Studio, but you typically click a button to attach Unity or the editor to Unity. And then at this point, now we can set a breakpoint on, say, this line of code. This line of code. Hello? This line of code. There we go. We get the check mark. And then, it's not going to happen unless I'm rewinding. So I'll come over to here and I hit the rewind key, and then immediately we'll actually break on this. So basically execution is completely paused at this point, and now you can use either these little icons or the basically hotkeys to kind of like do a step over. So this kind of steps over to the next line. And then you could also do a step into, where it actually goes into that method on whatever line that you're on. We're gonna say something here.
You should add that, like, stepping in and out, adding, removing breakpoints, and all of that. Be patient. I guess JetBrains is probably slightly better with this. That's what I hear. But like, I suspect isn't a lot of debuggers that can handle Unity in a very, very fast way. So sometimes you put in a breakpoint and you just have to wait a little bit before everything becomes responsive and it hits it properly. Yeah, I'm dealing with that as we speak with my consulting thing. Sometimes I need to wait for just frozen Unity for 30 seconds before the breakpoint is registered properly.
And we got someone getting a little ahead of here. We're gonna get to this.
Ooh, I get the controversial opinions about that. Continue.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah.
So, one thing, and then, so also, I don't know exactly what the interface is like in Visual Studio because it's been kind of a while since I've used it, but most often what we can do here, and it works really well for ECS stuff, is basically after a line is called, we can go back to it and say, like, hover over this value, and we can use these little drop downs to basically get some more information about what the data for that particular component or variable or whatever it was at any given time. If there's any even like lists, we can like look through the data in the lists. And and yeah, just get like some really good information about, you know, what the data was at that given point in time. So again, when we kind of, you know, are stepping through our code, we can really validate at each step that all the data is, you know, correct and as expected as we were. Again, this is something that I mentioned that we had talked about before, that kind of like, you know, John Carmack has really suggested, is just kind of like, after you write some code, just step through it like this, like literally just take your time, go line by line, make sure that the values at each step are, you know, doing the correct things. And then, you know, in theory, that'll lead to code that's, you know, much less error prone. And I know that I've definitely been like debugging one thing and then found like another issue that wasn't like actually presenting itself in the gameplay, but I'm like, okay, wait, no, that value should not be like this. Like, let me fix that. It didn't end up like fixing the issue that I was looking into, but it's still something that it needed to be fixed.
Like there's surprisingly often that you step through already written code or newly written code or whatever, and you realize like, this is not actually doing what I expected to do at all. This is just doing something else. I didn't think about that this for loop will be completely skipped, so the whole thing is just weird. And for some reason, maybe the result is not that bad. The error or whatever is not that it doesn't cause any super breaking parts. So you don't really think about it too much. And like when then you step through it, like, oh well, no, it's not doing what I thought it would be doing. This doesn't work. So yeah, step through it, validate it.
Yeah, 100%. And so yeah, I mean, this is something that could probably be talked about for a very long time, about, you know, stepping through code in this manner, and kind of, you know, using all the tools at your disposal to, again, just get some really good insight into what's going on in your code and everything like that. But yeah, one thing that I do want to point out that I have found particularly handy, and we'll see what Tobias's take on this, is the fact of conditional breakpoints. So rather than just having a regular breakpoint where it says breaks anytime that the execution of this code gets to a particular line that you set a breakpoint on, now we can actually set a condition. So we can say, for example, like, what do I have data-wise here that I could kind of breakpoint on? Well, actually, so here's what I'll do. I'll set this breakpoint again, and I'll just do something very simple. So I can say, we'll say condition if I is equal to 5. So then we can say done here. Now, this breakpoint will basically only fire, and I just deleted it, but whatever. This breakpoint will only fire when we're in this for loop when I is equal to 5. So it basically skips 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then when it hits I equals 5, then the breakpoint will actually stop there. Now, why I say this has been really useful for me is, you know, especially when we're working with like entity data, and maybe we have like a large number of entities, and there's only like one specific entity that like this error is happening on. Maybe if there's like, you know, one player entity that the issue is happening on, but we have like a player and a bunch of NPCs all running this same system, you know, but we only want to look out for the player. Well, maybe let's put a condition in there, and we can say, you know, if the, you know, if it has the player tag, or if the entity ID equals to this, then, you know, hit that breakpoint. And then now we can step through the rest of the code, knowing that we are, say, iterating that code against that entity, and not some like random NPC, or just, you know, the first NPC of the list that it got to. And again, we can just kind of like, again, do things very situational, where, you know, depending on, you know, the state of input or any other number of variables, I've found it particularly helpful to, you know, break in certain conditions. And that way I don't have to like step through a bunch of code and then kind of like look at manually and say, okay, I think this is the right entity, or this is where I should be breaking. Just kind of knowing that it's doing that a little bit more automatically. But I'd love to hear your controversial opinion on this.
This might be a situation where the JetBrain master race is having another experience, and me as a Visual Studio pleb is because in my experience, conditional breakpoints in Visual Studio, and this goes back to like 2013 when I started working in C# with the Visual Studio. Conditional breakpoints are makes everything so slow that I just I just write an if statement in a
You
log
just
and
you
break on
just
the
write
log
the
instead.
condition and then break on that.
Yeah. That's how I do. I never use unconditional. I think the idea is super great, but it's not like the thing like eh, writing is slow isn't really slow, or stepping through it when it happens doesn't. It's just that your code, your game, just executes so much slower when you have a breakpoint,
Weird.
when you have a conditional breakpoint. At least that was like the last time I tried it. It was just so slow. So I'm just like, nah, I just write the
Interesting.
code. Like, yeah, but maybe in JetBrains it's not at all that case, so it doesn't matter.
I haven't necessarily noticed that same experience, but for the most part, I only have probably max like 2 or 3 of these conditional breakpoints at once. So I don't know if if I scale up and had
But
like several of these for some
I'm not
reason.
talking. I'm not talking a bunch of them. I'm talking
I
about
didn't get the sense that
just
you were though,
no.
but
Yeah, I'm just like one or two, and it's like just it cuts the performance in half for me.
dang.
Yeah, well, I don't know, but that's probably Visual Studio being stupid. I should
Well, it
just
looks like
switch. I don't know.
Bonte was having the same issue. Bonte, remind me, are you using Visual Studio as well, or are you on JetBrains? Because
Yeah.
no, it's
But
worked well for me.
it's sort of, I guess you can probably do it in a way better way, and like you can always make it faster and better than whatever I've been using, of course. But also you like that's it got to do some just very fancy, yeah, Visual Studio, very fancy reflection based dynamic execution thingy to be able
Yeah,
to do
yeah.
whatever it's doing, right? So for me, when I sort of realized how slow it was, I just like took it in for like, and like stopped using it slowly by slowly, and I realized, yeah, I guess it's just tricky to like have that kind of a conditional break like uh, injected into your code like that without it being compiled or what. I don't know how they do it. Obviously it's not
Kind of makes
like a
sense.
rocket
Yeah.
science, but it's probably not compiled and integrated as well as just a normal if statement.
Interesting.
So
Yeah, makes sense. Well, you got to get on the JetBrains train, and then you can use your conditional breakpoints again.
yeah, and they need to sponsor me, and then I will go over. It's
There
so
you go.
expensive. Like I can afford that, but I'm just like, this is so expensive.
I think it's
Com-
worth it.
yeah, I probably is. I'm just being a dummy.
We're all Unity pilled, which means we use debug logs instead of breakpoints, anyways. True.
Yeah. Waiting for the goddamn debugger to connect. It's like, and then you get a freezing thing, and you need to just stop the debugger, and you need to wait for like a minute for it to stop, and then you need to force it to stop, and then you need to attach it, and like I me and debugger are not friends, but I need to call him up every now and then and just like deal with this shit and have it, because
When it
sometimes that's the
works
only
right,
way.
I mean, man, it's very helpful.
Yes, very much. All right.
Okay. And yeah, I mean that's basically all I had as far as debugging goes. Is there any other like big points on kind of debugging that you wanted to bring up at all? Any other
I would
helpful
I
things that
would
you
say
found?
that when you were in and like showed off the you can expect values in real time and all of that, I was like,
Yeah.
yeah, like every time we have this thing, and you call and write to me early like, oh, you should do the quick tip of the day this week or whatever. I'm like thinking, I never really like, oh, you know what, just using the goddamn Visual Studio or JetBrains to debug stuff, and it's just such a big topic. But I think the main point people should take away who may be not too familiar with that is that this is really not much to do with dots, to be honest. Like you can just
Yeah, definitely.
dig through YouTube or whatever for how do I debug with Visual Studio in C#, and then you just go ham with that, and there's just a million different ways. But I would say the biggest thing I would say is like performance is a tricky thing while debugging. The more, for example, the more breakpoints you have in your code, the longer the debugger will take to attach to a unit editor. So if you want to have a snappy thing, make sure to go in and clear all your breakpoints, and then just add the breakpoint exactly where you need them. So there's a bunch
and actually, one thing that I've noticed is like on some lines of generated code, like I'll click on something. You see how in JetBrains I get this little check mark next to that breakpoint? I guess it means like that is like a valid accepted breakpoint or something.
Yeah.
But sometimes, like, let's see, I don't know on what specific lines that it happens, but every once in a while I'll like click this breakpoint and then it like doesn't get that check mark and the breakpoint just kind of goes away. Like the breakpoint doesn't stick, I guess, if you will.
Yeah, that happens. I don't know what I think that might be some where the actual line of the code is a little bit tricky to understand, because like the compiler will scramble some things and like the debugger has to understand the originating line, and I think that's probably part of it. It's like the actual executing code is not necessarily exactly what the code is saying when you're writing it. So I'm seeing in the chat Wayne Games writes, how do you draw shape like wider sphere?
I was just going to
gigantic A-line. Yeah.
boom boom.
Yeah.
A-line.
But that's also a gigantic subject to dive into. How to deal with that.
Yeah, you can do this all from a burst and jobs context and everything like this. And, of course, you can use some of the built-in Unity debug.draw line, but like you have to do a lot more manual stuff and you can't do it, within burst. And, again, if you want a box, you have to like calculate all the vertices and draw all the lines between those and everything. So,
I have actually one thing that maybe people don't know about. Can you just make a mock-up? Maybe I can do that. Do I have any? Yeah, I can actually
do
this.
It's so good.
What's I like? Oh yeah.
That we're mentioning it in like every stream now.
Yes. Let's see. Void on my computer is so slow. Gizmos dot draw cube or something. All right. We have some random thing here. 0. Or we just do like the normal transform dot position, and then we have some vector 3.1. Right. So, Johnny, how would you make sure that this rotates when the game object rotates?
How it rotates when the game object rotates.
How would you make sure that this cube rotates when the game objects that it's following rotates? That it's actually not just tracking the position, but also the rotation.
Is there like another gizmos dot something or other that you can?
There's a comment in the chat which sort of leads into this.
Push matrix. So what you? Oh, gizmos dot matrix.
So what you do? This is actually way less known fact than I realized.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is just kind of like 3D graphic stuff, which most of us Unity developers don't really worry about too much,
then-
right?
Then remember, then you have to do this also. Because the whole thing is taken care of by the matrix.
Right. Nice.
That's way easier. Yeah, so that's maybe something the chat didn't know. So every single gizmos should be positioned in this way. It's just so much easier. Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
You just
Sweet.
push on, and then it becomes like in all the draw gizmos. You just push in the position you're interested in, and you just continue. So if everybody does that, the matrix, the gizmos.matrix value is always just pushed onto the next version of it, right? So you need to keep track of that in that case, because I don't know if it resets it to the next gizmo. It probably does, but yeah. Anyway, you'll see what I mean. This is the way to do position and rotation at the same time properly.
Cool.
All right.
All right. Yeah, I think that's kind of like all I had for the main topic here. We can kind of get into a little bit of our kind of wind down topics here. We can get into our dynamic allocation, which is the fun things that we have to share with the community. I know you had mentioned that you wanted to talk about some of the SpaceX stuff, but didn't know that I was going to do a whole kind of Prefetch warm-up topic on that. So did you
can start. I have an idea. You can start sharing yours first.
So yeah, what I wanted to share is actually something that's going on as soon as right now, which is the Summer Games Fest, which is kind of the replacement of E3 that Jeff Keighley has been putting on. So I guess it just started maybe a couple hours ago or something like that, hour and a half-ish ago. But yeah, they're kind of like just showing off a bunch of the new and cool upcoming games. I think these things are always fun to watch, good celebrations of games, and see what people are interested in and see if there's anything in here that kind of like inspires you. Again, most of the stuff is kind of like on the AAA level, not necessarily a whole lot of indie games in some of these showcases, but and actually doing it like live in a theater right now, which is kind of cool. So yeah, I think there's like a couple of these happening over the course of the next few days, and pretty sure actually another fellow creator, Matt Gamble, who runs the channel Game Dev Guide, he works for a studio, and sounds like they're going to be showcasing their game on what day? That would be Sunday at I think there's like a PC specific one, so yeah, it would be interesting to see that. And yeah, there's something going on with Sam Lake here dancing around.
Alan Lake. All right, I found what I could show.
All right, let's see it.
If people hasn't seen, Braid is. Oh yeah, you already seen. You brought up the Braid rewind system for.
Yeah.
There's let's see if I can post this. There's an interview with Jonathan Blow mostly by Casey Muratori, but also by other people, where they go through the original design ideas about Braid in a long podcast format.
Yeah.
I've listened through all of them, and all of them are
good.
very.
They're so good.
Yeah, and I don't think you have mentioned it, right? Or have you?
I think I mentioned it in conjunction with like some of the other things. Like I mentioned it when I was showing the rewind mechanic the other week.
Okay. Yeah. Well, at least twice.
It is worth mentioning as many times as humanly possible because it is that good.
Yeah.
A lot of like good technical as well as like design topics in these. So yeah.
And on this thing, on this topic quickly, like if people enjoy contrarian programmers who have very spicy takes, obviously Jonathan Blow is one of those people, but he's a little bit too coarse sometimes. I think Casey Muratori is like slightly more nuanced, and like he's still very like forward. He just like goes onto a podcast and like they tells the host like, yeah, this code is absolutely trash, you should just throw everything away. So he's still very, very contrarian and just spikes out, but he's got a more mild way of like presenting himself in some way.
Yeah,
so
Jonathan Blow definitely can be like, oh yeah, this sucks, you should never do that ever, kind of
yeah
thing,
he's
almost,
like
kind of
somebody
almost.
asks him on his like live stream like, oh, how should I do this, and he's like, just why do you even come on this stream to ask me this? You can just Google it and like calm down, calm down. Yeah, but anyway, people should Google KC Muratori and just check out random podcasts with him, because he has a lot of interesting talks and stuff, and he's doing the rounds all around different podcasts every now and then. So he's a very interesting person. I'm getting more love, getting more interested in him every time he says something.
Yeah, definitely a lot of good stuff there.
Yeah. All right.
So, with that, I think we can kind of close out our show here. So we do want to thank all of our supporters over on Patreon as well as YouTube. And you can join in the YouTube memberships now. I basically have all the same perks across Patreon as well as YouTube memberships. So if you do want to support us, of course, it's not required, but is very much appreciated in whatever place is most convenient for you. And of course, we do want to thank our supporters at the CPU Register tier, which is our highest tier. So thank you very much to eCool for your support over there. And with that is episode 20 of the Hot Path Show. Sounds like we're going to be back next week. It'll be myself and Danny. I think he wants to talk a little bit about how iJob Entity works, because after all, he's the one who wrote iJob Entity. So,
the man, the myth, legend.
Indeed. So with that, hope everybody has a great weekend. Go enjoy some Braid podcast and maybe some recaps of some space travel. But you got any exciting plans for the weekend? Just sleeping all day tomorrow, you said?
Well, probably a bunch of sleeping and take a run with the dog. That's about it.
That's good stuff. All right. Well, with that, thanks everyone for joining us here today. And we'll see you next week for a new episode of the Hot Path Show. See ya.
Bye.